Yo, what's going on, guys? Koi here. Today we're going to be talking about day two, what I've kind of figured out. Sadly, there was one issue that did happen, which was Roblox went down yesterday during stream. So pretty much I had to sift off and do some solo grinding on my own. Uh, of course, as you know, if you do not know, this whole test is pretty much an experiment to see what what stats matter now, and how does the new stat system affect characters, players, NPCs, bosses, raids. And from what we got so far, it looks like to me that the original stats for or at least the difference between stats that have always been like the biggest issue was the jump from Namekian Saga to the Android Saga. If you guys don't know, the Android Saga bosses have always been significantly more tankier than anything you fight on Namek and stuff like that. So, with that being the case, that modifier still sticks, but now is enhanced as well. So, anything that you would be able to do past that level 200 to 300 point is now going to be much harder off rip. And there's a few things we did figure out, and there's some theories that some people have, which we still have to figure out ourselves. But with some of those theories, right? Some of those theories is that as long as you put some types of stat points in, you're going to be able to get bonuses on some types of moves, which does make sense. But the real issue is that moves pretty much don't scale correctly, dependent on your level. They actually just are enhanced with their own specific modifier that make them much more stronger without even having to put a single stat point in. So, say something like Dragon Fist, World Annihilation, just stuff like that. Just different moves like that that are just on that different area, which is the Boo Saga. If you don't have those moves, you're not going to be able to compete in stuff like PvP or endgame grinding. So that's just how that's going to work. That's how it's been set up. I've seen too many people spam Dragon Fist and other moves. And you could say, okay, but there are some moves that are significantly stronger. And that's where I want to talk about the next segment, which is difference in level and difference in level and skill. Now, there are some theories about how some stat points will significantly change the stat output whenever it comes down to damage on skills. Now, is this something that is going to matter quite a bit in the early game? Not particularly. Now, the reason I say this is because it's a stats game, and it's a skills game too. So if it comes down to skills, the skills in total, moves I should say, the moves themselves do quite a bit of damage if you do input some stats, but it just depends on how far you're into the game, and then after that, what moves are available to you. And there are some moves that just are absolutely dookie all the way through, from beginning to end, and there's some moves that are significantly stronger than other moves. So, with that being the case, I think there has to be definitely an overhaul on the way they look at moves, because from what I saw, early game moves have not changed too much. At least the Saiyan Saga moves, even though they said that Saiyan Saga moves got updated. From what I saw, and from a lot of us, we just can't use them in content like the Boo Saga, because those Boo Saga moves start off at 80,000 damage, like 90,000 damage. You know what I mean? They start off at that, and then after that they continue, powering through and doing more damage with a ridiculously high modifier. So the more stats you have into that specific thing, of course, it's going to just demolish. Now, there are some pinpoints that we did find, which was fighting pretty much the content in the Android Saga with no stats is not a issue at all. I was pretty much able to put my hands on everybody from Cell to Jiro and stuff like that. Now, the only difference that we kind of ran into was raid bosses, but I think that whenever it comes down to Android Saga, raid bosses do scale much higher than normal bosses in total. So that's where we got the gameplay from two different moments when I went from level 200 to level 260, and like we were fighting the super Android 13, and honestly, it wasn't that much of a big deal. He just had a lot of HP. And then I tried to fight PyCon and Otherworld on my solo because obviously it just isn't it wasn't available at the time during stream, so I did try to fight him. I got that recorded. The HP scaling for bosses pretty much are just way higher, and it's just crazy how high the HP scaling is now. Whenever you get to that level, so you physically have to be high enough level to fight some of these bosses like 300, 400, 500. But if you're an end game player, you get rid of all your stats. Let's say you're level 700, you're going to be able to fight all these raid bosses, no problem at all. The only one that people still say that they struggle with is Janimba, but we all know that Janimba's overtuned for a very specific and other reason, mostly having to do with bugs and stuff like that. Super Janimba and stuff, which is not that big of a deal because this doesn't really have to do with progression. This is like end game raids, which are supposed to be harder, but I really want to see how this kind of affects progression further into space, because a lot of us when we were discussing space, we were like, okay, space is probably going to be the first actual wall. So once I get to level 300 today, hopefully on stream, with no problems or anything like that, like no down detection, nothing, none of that, we should be totally fine. And from there, we'll move on and figure out pretty much what is the next step to uh, putting in stats. Like, when do stats matter? Because right now, another issue we've kind of ran into is HP. HP scaling is not scaling high enough to combat the Android Saga damage. And if that's the case, then I'm going to take even more damage from characters like PyCon and stuff like that. This is where forms come into place. But I think that whenever we do discuss stats, forms are going to be left out on that, because as we know, forms bring modifiers like defensive increases, nullified damage, pretty much straight up damage buffs and stuff like that. Right now, I'm low key farming Kaioken, so trying to get Kaioken times 20 and then work off of that. And see how far I can go with that as well without any stats put in, and move on from there. So while I do the solo grind, I hope you guys, I hope you guys enjoy. Freaking, we're just still trying to figure out the stat system, because obviously there's a major difference right now, and we're just gonna have to see how further this goes. All right, I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. Peace out. See you guys on stream. Catch you later.